Welcome to Leadership Traits Decoded. I'm Cynthia and Chief Experience Officer at the Culture Think Tank.
And I'm Drea Martin, Chief Operating Officer of the Crucible. We are collaborative partners at Performance Leadership Learning Lab, where we transform leadership intelligence into return-driven action.
Today, we're unpacking the leadership traits essential for building, investing in, and scaling successful companies. Our insights come directly from data-driven metrics within our platform's solution. So let's dive in. Hello there, Drea. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing well. How are you, Cynthia?
I'm good. I'm feeling better. My cold isn't quite as bad. It's, as usual, stuff goes away.
Oh, that's
Eventually, you feel better.
Yeah, right. Totally.
So, Drea, I was thinking today about our topic, and for a variety of reasons, one of the ones at the execution engine that's listed under urgency of execution, one of the things resonated me with was discussing somebody who is or is not metrics focused, because we live in a world of analytics, algorithms, metrics, quantum leaps, AI, and for somebody who's not really technical, it's interesting to hear. So I thought I would just ask you about that for a minute. What do you think are the benefits of being metrics focused in an organization?
Yeah, the main benefit is that if you are more metrics focused, it means that you have the ability to set, track, and then even act on the right performance indicators to drive results. If you actually have that information in front of you, the assumption then is that you are able to take the insights, the metrics that are being tracked that you're focusing on, and use them to make better decisions. Because you can use past information, you can use ongoing information to then decide where to continue, to see what's potentially going on, or recognize patterns. All of that is enabled by being metrics focused. What do you think about that?
So when somebody is very high performing, and even it is their job to be metrics focused, what do we look for in those traits? Or what's the upside of having that, if it in fact is your job?
Yeah, then consistent tracking probably indicates that someone is particularly metrics focused, implementing that tracking, and then also balancing using that information versus just collecting it would probably be another indicator. If that's someone's job, to make sure that they're not only keeping track of the right metrics, but then also utilizing them when needed, and then not leaning on them too much, and maybe still having that room for other things like strategy and creativity, kind of take a step beyond that as well.
So this is really interesting. So let's say that the individual supervises 2 or 3 or 4 people, and their job is around metrics and algorithms and technology and so on. What if one of those individuals really tends to go more to opinions, biases, reflections of human behavior for whatever reason? What do you do with that? If there's traits, say they tend more towards that than actual metrics. I mean, they still do it, but they have their other interests, so to speak.
Yeah, it makes me think a little bit actually about kind of group functioning and how kind of groups come together, because my first thought is great. You have more diversity of thought. You have someone who's oriented less towards the metrics and therefore will see other things and maybe pay attention to, bring them up, and even advocate for other areas that could be important to at least be aware of. The other side of that is you don't want that person to then completely undermine or derail, bringing back that term, the efforts that you have within a metrics-driven team. So part of it is fostering the culture that you want to have. So as the person who is supervising or managing that group of individuals, celebrating progress on key indicators or things like that versus just efforts would be a way to kind of bring things back towards and reinforcing this more data-driven culture, but also understanding that maybe that person can be an advocate for different ideas, and that might strengthen the team to actually have diversity in that area versus just if everybody's looking at the metrics, it's all about the numbers, you might lose out on some of those insights, those ideas, and some of that just variation that might be interesting.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was involved in a group that had somebody with this profile. Totally understood metrics, did the metrics, got it, no problem. But the issue was that they could, as opposed to anybody else in the room, they could take a step back mentally and they could see the strategic approaches that were worth discussing. They could see the strategic outcomes that were a possibility that weren't on the table or in the discussion before, because they had that ability to step out of that detail, that drive and what they are to be doing, and kind of take a step back and see, as you said, a bigger picture. I think there's huge value in any employee that is capable of doing that. Because frequently when you see someone like that, they'll go straight to, here's the systems problem, here's the process problem, and they'll want to further go down the road of talking about all the numbers around the systems and the processes.
Right.
I will say that at the think tank, Will Lindstrom has a metrics focus. Obviously, this is what he's done. He did an operational analysis before owning this company. He loves the data that comes out of all of that. However, frequently, if not 50% of the time, when I ask Will a question about something, I don't know if it's the way I ask it or what specifically I'm asking, but it's like when I want to take a step back to talk more strategic than when he wants to talk about spreadsheets and that kind of thing, metrics, he will respond to me with, oh, yeah, that's easy to help you with, Cynthia. And he will step back and immediately give me a strategic picture around it.
Wow, that's
You
great
know,
differentiation.
that is really awesome, isn't it? That somebody can see both sides, their brain, their left brain and their right brain is working, and he can see it and he can explain it to me, who is somebody totally out of that arena, explain it to me so that I understand. And he's ready for it. It's not like I have to think about it. He just goes, it always starts with, oh, that's easy, because I guess what he does is really hard. And what I ask is really kind of easy to explain. But, we live in a world where technology is, in fact, business, and it's growing at a rapid rate, having more and more. And now we're at quantum computing. The understanding of metrics, which was one of our previous podcasts, and then this one is a good match. It's a good match to think of, and maybe in many ways dispel the belief that if you are this way, you can't be strategic.
Great. You can have both that strategic perspective and that metrics focus.
And that metrics focus, exactly.
Yeah. I like to sometimes it's easy when you're more strategic, oriented, or even when you see problems. I think a metrics focus can be really helpful because it can be great sometimes to see, even say one thing happens and you were wondering then, like, oh, is this something we need to be worried about? Or is this something that's going to be continuous? You can look at the data then and go back to the metrics and understand on what scale is this situation? To what extent
Yes.
do I have to worry
Yes.
about it? Even simple things like using just basic tracking analytics can be a great way to ground yourself in understanding to what extent do I need to take this potential problem seriously, or is this just something to watch out for in the future? That's kind of that intersection too of where the metrics are really helpful to keep you accountable, maybe for to what extent to take things to the next level versus to kind of monitor them and just understand that there's something that might be emerging.
Sure, because every trait that we talk about has areas where you can go overboard on or underboard on, if you will.
Right.
It's so good to realize that human beings can naturally have the ability to do left and right thinking, and sometimes need to be reined in a little bit based on whatever the question was.
Right, exactly.
So, that's really awesome. That was really interesting to me. And I will say that, everybody that I work for is tech, and I'm not at all. It's interesting to me to see how each of them interact with the fact that they know I'm not and they are,
Right.
speaking that language. So it's really interesting to me. It's been interesting and really joyful type of working environment. So do you have any last thoughts or any last takeaways around this one?
I think the main takeaway that I heard is this notion of you can be both metrics focused and strategic. Also, this notion of there's maybe even a specific strength in being good at both and having that ability to not only see the metrics, focus on them, and then take a step back and see the bigger picture, or even hear and listen to and think about the bigger picture. So that was kind of my key. That transition, that ability is really cool and maybe the thing we should all be striving for versus being one or the other.
One or the other, right. Agreed. My takeaway kind of dovetails off of yours in that the individual always has to be responsible and, attentive to their own developmental needs. But I think it's also really important for actually the CEO to do that with every trait, but especially if, they may not have come to their position because they were big metrics people. They may have come for another reason, and the understanding what their employees and how their employees and how their leadership team is using or does use the metrics. And where it works and where it doesn't, it'd be a great way to gently sway back and forth to learn a little bit more and help someone develop.
That's a great insight.
Well, it's the only one I got. So thank you so much, Drea, for again, as always, for everything that you share. Appreciate you.
You too. Thanks. Talk
Take
to you
care.
next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Leadership Traits Decoded. You'll be able to find all our episodes on the Performance Leadership Learning Lab website at www.pllab.com, or you can listen on your favorite streaming platform.
We'll be back soon to explore the next essential trait. Until then, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn if you have any questions or ideas.